Hey everyone, Arthur of Gaming here, and we are on for another one of our 10 question interviews, Dungeons and Dragons style. And to bringing in my guest Logan, and I'll throw it right over to Logan. Logan, let us know where you can find you and what you're currently doing.
Yeah, so my name's Logan Hanley, like Arthur said. You guys can find me on Instagram at the handle right there, DM underscore screening. You guys can also find me on Fabled 42, where I play in their Adventures in Middle Earth game. I will be playing in the Realms of Ukador game as well, and then I'll be dungeon mastering on Friday nights my game that's called the Cantor Chronicles.
Nice, very cool, very cool. That sounds cool. I can't wait to check
Yeah,
that one
I'm
out.
super excited for it.
So, as everybody know, if you've watched any of my previous videos here, I got 10 questions. Right now, it's going to be the same 10 questions I've asked everybody else, but got 10 questions for Logan. He does not know these questions. He has no idea what's coming at him, and we're just going to have a little bit of fun with it. As always, you guys can find me at the Arthur of Gaming on like Instagram, and we are using the amazing Vorpal Board software, as you can see up in the way up there in that corner. Oh, maybe that's corner over there, wherever it is. One of those corners, you can see Vorpal Board. Check those guys out at vorpalboard.com. They're awesome, and the software's great. So, first question: what is your process when naming a character? Do you do
Ooh,
research? How do you come up with it?
okay. Let's see. I'll kind of do it in stages because I thought of a few different characters and why I chose their names. So couple of them, the first couple characters I made were based on, or the first character I made, his name was Grogmar. He was a half-orc barbarian. I named him, he was the first character I made right after finding D&D, and I had started watching Critical Role, and that's what got me into the game. So obviously I love Travis Willingham. I love Grog. So I was like, Grogmar, that works. Um, transition to when, I decided making my own characters. The first caster I ever played, he was a half-elf sorcerer, and his name was Ambrose Milano, where I went to college. I went to college at St. Ambrose University.
Hmm.
St. Ambrose was St. Ambrose of Milan. So I was like Ambrose Milano.
Nice.
Seems like a very kind of sorcerer name. Um, Fast forward to the Adventures in Middle Earth game that I'm currently playing in. That one took some time because they give you names in the book that for your race, and I'm a man of Minas Tirith, and they give you some names, and I really wanted the name that I had to mean something and mean something historically in Lord of the Rings canon. So I was looking through the names, and Imrahil popped up, and he was the Prince of Dol Amroth who came to the aid of Gondor during those fight, like during the siege of Gondor and all that. And I really liked who that was as a character. Like as that character with that name, and I'm like, all right, cool. I want to emulate that in my character. Um, but overall, I think when I'm naming my characters, it's kind of just random. Like I don't, there's a lot, I've read a lot of fantasy books, and I watch a lot of fantasy style movies and shows, and you tend to take names that you've heard and either alter them or keep them the same or try to like flavor them as your own.
Yeah.
And so it's um, I don't know. I mean, when worse comes to worse, I'll hop on like a fantasy name generator,
Yep.
but most of the time I tend to find they just kind of pop up out of nowhere in my head.
Nice, nice.
Yeah.
I know for me, for one, it's one of the hardest things I do is naming things, and then it's for me, it's painstaking.
As a dungeon master, I am awful at naming stuff.
Yeah.
I'll like throw a random NPC in there, and the players will be like, "Well, what's his name?" And I'm like, "Where's my Volo's guide? Where's my Xanathars?" I was like flipping through the pages trying to find the
Absolutely.
name.
It's
Um,
painstaking for me as a dungeon master. It really is.
yeah, I think creating a name for my character is way easier
Yeah.
than I have to actually prep the dungeon master part.
Yeah, and especially when you're creating your own world, like naming
Mhm.
countries and cities, and oh my God, I'm awful at it. I'm so
I've
bad.
found I've found a couple times with cities and stuff that like I've named a city like for some reason, my northern city that's kind of based on Norse and Viking culture is named Kattegat, which is named the same name as if you've watched the Vikings on History Channel.
I haven't.
Um, it's the same name as that city. And like I'm sitting there, I'm like, people who watch the show are gonna know what it is. And I'm like, but do I care? Like it's such a good name.
Right.
Sometimes you have those names that are just like you have to use.
Yeah. I hear you. Okay. Good. Excellent. All right. Next one. What is your most memorable critical success?
Hmm. As a player or a dungeon master?
Whichever one. Whichever one you
Okay.
think is better. Whichever one you think is more interesting.
Um, okay. So I'll say player. Um, one of the during the virtual GaryCon, I had a couple opportunities to play in these choose your own adventures that Solo was running.
Mm-hmm.
For those of you who don't know who Solo is Chris Solo of who runs Fabled 42. But we were in a pirate ship battle. Like we were literally in a boat battle where they were coming up on our one side, on our port side, and I was up in the crow's nest. And I just looked at Solo. I'm like, I'm gonna tie myself off, Jack Sparrow style, swing down, do a nice little. And I was playing a kobold rogue. The other crew was a pirate kobold crew, a kobold pirate crew. So I was like, I'm gonna tie myself off, swing down, do kind of like a flip in the air and superhero land onto the deck of this other ship. And so I was like, all right, go ahead. And so I rolled and I was like, all right, cool. I did it. Right. Well, the very next thing I go, I'm a kobold. They're a kobold. Do they recognize that I just jumped down, or like they completely oblivious that I'm here? And he's like, well, roll a stealth check. Roll the stealth check. Got nat 20 on it. He was like, none of them notice you.
Nice.
And I'm like, all right, cool. Daggers, and just start whipping daggers at kobolds, knocking them out. That was a lot of fun. That was a moment for me that was like 100%. I had no intention of doing it until I was in that moment.
Right.
And as it happened, it just, by the end, I was sitting there just beaming as a player because, you have these moments where, you don't, as a dungeon master, I don't always get to do cool things
Right.
and by cool things, I mean cool things from a player perspective.
Right.
Like the players may think what I do is cool, but like sometimes I'm like, all right, guys, like, yeah. But that was really a moment for me where I was just like, that was awesome. And that really defined who the character was for me.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, and you're right. As a dungeon master, you don't really get to, swing down from the other side, do flips and land in the thing, and because nobody really cares if your NPCs are cool or not.
Yeah, exactly.
They're just there to kill them. They're just sacks. They are bags of experience that they want to stab holes into and drink the experience out of. That's all they care about.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I got you there. I totally feel you. All right, then the next one, the flip side of the coin. What's your most memorable failure?
That's a dungeon master one. So in my home game, so the way that I'm running Cantor Chronicles, Cantor Chronicles is actually the first campaign of my home game. So my home game is playtesting what I'm bringing to live stream now, which is really cool because now I get to take it and edit it. And actually, Cantor Chronicles is going to be 110% different than what my first campaign at home was. But during my first home game, they got to the point where stupid dungeon master moment, I allowed them to take a shortcut through this mountain range to get to a town that was on the other side. And the way that the mountain range was set up was that there was a mine that the town used, and then there was a dragon cult inside the mine that had a nice little temple. Well, if they would have went to the town and then went through the mine and up into, up through the mine and the temple, they would have came out on top and been super tired and exhausted from all the fighting to find out that there was a dragon den on top. Well, what I did instead to save some time was say, oh, there's a path that goes through the middle of the mountain. And in hindsight, I shouldn't have done it, but it took them right up and across where the dragon was. And so they were like, all right, cool, we're going to go in there. They found out it was a dragon, and they were a level 5 party fighting the young adult, whichever red dragon was a CR10.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a young red dragon, or it's, yeah, because it's not the adult. Or is it the adult? Maybe the adult. I don't remember. But so they go in there and they're like, all right, we're going to do this. And they start fighting it. End of the first round, it was at half health. And I'm sitting there like, what the heck? This is supposed to be my big bad at the end. And so, fast forward 2 more rounds and the dragon's dead and they're taking it apart. And they're already like harvesting the organs and the hide. And I'm just sitting there like, what is going on? And so for me, I think, looking at it that way, that would probably be my biggest failure as a dungeon master.
Yep.
And definitely something that I've used now to kind of like, it was a learning experience.
Absolutely. See, that's when I start adding health onto the dragon. Like, make it last a couple more rounds at least. Just add some health on,
I really should have.
Just to drag the fight out a little bit. But that totally happens. I mean, sometimes your players just, walk in and crit hit. 3 of them crit hit right off the bat in the first round, and you're like, what the heck? There goes my big bad guy.
My bad. I didn't realize I was going to lose battery as fast as I was, and I forgot to plug in my laptop.
It happens.
Yeah, but yeah, it's one of those things where like in the moment you're like, this is going to be epic. And then 3 rounds later, you're like, this is not epic.
Not epic. Epic was gone. Yep. All right. Yeah. So next one, question 4. What is your most memorable character death?
Okay. So I have actually is it like my character or is it a player character?
Whichever one you want.
Okay.
Whichever one you want.
I'm trying to think. That's a good question. So I don't experience a whole lot of death in my home game. We're starting to change that a little bit. I'm trying to make my game with the second campaign a little bit more gritty. But I think the death that would have had to have weighed the hardest on me as a player, it wasn't one that I didn't die and I didn't facilitate the death, but it was one that kind of weighed heavy on me as a player. In the Adventures in Middle Earth game in the first session, my character was kind of blessed with being called the tank. even though I had like 10 hit points and like a 16 AC. I was the guy that was the tank. But so we got into this boss fight at the very end, and the boss just jumps right over me and mauls one of the other players to death. And I had taken my role as the protector and the guy who was going to be, protecting, the tank of the party, so like to heart that as soon as the combat was over, I pretty much like shut down as a player. It was like to the point where, and the Adventures in Middle Earth game is a very strange creature. It's a very strange game.
Yeah.
There's a grittiness and a sense of, what's the word? There's a sense of danger everywhere. Life actually has meaning there because there is no magical healing.
Right.
And so when Tristan, and I don't know if you've met Tristan, but Tristan's character, when his character died, I was almost on the verge of, tears a little, because emotionally I just felt like I failed and I didn't do my job. And it's a death that I'm going to, and I've talked to Bree about it a few times, cause Bree plays in the game with us. It's one that it weighed heavy on my heart as a player and as a character.
Yeah.
Because I had the idea that like, oh, this is going to be fine. I'm just going to protect people and they'll be good.
Right.
And then when it didn't happen, it just like messed me up emotionally.
Well, I mean, the good thing is with this, that's what's good about role playing games, right? You can explore this kind of emotion and stuff, and nobody
Yeah.
really has to die, which
Yeah,
is the
no,
good
and
part.
that's one thing I was talking to Bree about. It's, we play in this game where death is a probability or a possibility at every turn. And in Adventures in Middle Earth, it really is more so.
Mhm.
But you know, you get to experience death on an emotional level that's similar to real life without the fact that you actually lose somebody.
Right.
And it's not, there isn't that crossover saying, oh, death in D&D is death in real life. It's not, obviously. But sometimes you get so emotionally attached to characters that, like, one of my players, or one of the games that I played in, we were level 4 and we were fighting this group, and it came down to death saving throws for the player, and he hit the last death saving throw and just looked up at all of us, and you could see in his eyes he was starting to cry. It was his first character that he had ever played.
Yeah.
And emotionally, like, it happens. Like, it's such a great experience. It's a very rewarding experience to be able to play a character and then miss that they're gone.
Yeah. Yeah, well, because they kind of become part of you and like your friend. They kind of become your friend, It's when you play them for a good period of time, obviously.
Yeah, they become a part of you.
Yeah. All right, and so this is a good one for you. We'll kind of phase right into that. Tell me about your favorite character of all time.
So my favorite character of all time is actually an NPC that I use, and I try to implement into all games. I wouldn't say he's immortal because he is a halfling, but his name's Swanson Cascans. He's a halfling. He's a halfling drunken master monk of a god that I created called Noonkosh, the cupbearer. And Swanson runs an inn and tavern called the Red Hare Inn. And he was pretty much like, he's pretty much that NPC that I throw in at the beginning of the game within the first few levels to try to get the party to love. And then they go back and always kind of talk to him and stuff. I've really, really wanted to play Swanson as a character. Just because I want to live his story, and kind of reinvent some of his adventures. But I have so much fun playing him whenever they're in town. Yeah, he's just this little drunk dude that likes to party, and he does his best to kind of foster community in the town that he lives in. And in my home game, they made him one of the council members for the new kingdom, and he's like, what the hell? I'm this drunk dude, now I got to run government. But yeah, Swanson would probably be, he's honestly my favorite.
Nice. Kind of sounds like Tyrion if Tyrion was a monk.
Yeah, it's and it was before I really had delved into it. But yeah, it was. Yeah, he kind of is like Tyrion. He's not as smart as Tyrion. He doesn't have the wit or the brain of Tyrion, though.
Yeah. Neat though. That's good. Good one. Yeah. All right. Tell me about your regular gaming group. Like what? How many people are in it? Like what? And I mean the people, not the characters, right? Because D&D always has this kind of legacy of being a bunch of white dudes sitting around a table playing Dungeons and Dragons. So like what is your regular gaming group like?
So in terms of diversity, I run a game for 5 people currently, and I think 5 is that sweet spot. It's not 4 seems like a little it doesn't seem like enough. 6 sometimes feels like too much. 5 for me is the sweet spot. So whenever I run games, I typically try to run for like 5 people. But I have within that game, I have 3 males and 4 females, or not 3 males and 4 females, three males and 2 females. And then within those, I have a couple different racial backgrounds and stuff like that. It's a pretty diverse party. It isn't all middle-aged white dudes sitting at the table, thankfully. And I tried that. Like, that's one thing that I kind of have really tried to do is I want a group that isn't a bunch of just white dudes like me sitting around the table playing D&D. I want a group of different people who have had different life experiences. I think our oldest player is almost 40 and our youngest player is like 20, just turned 21.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to be 27. And we have a couple who are in the mix with age-wise as well. But, definitely a good mix of experiences, a good mix of, different backgrounds, both religiously and culturally. So it really brings a lot to the table.
Nice. Yeah, and definitely to just clarify, I'm not trying to say a bunch of old white dudes sitting around a table is bad. Like, obviously.
No, it's not.
But the one great thing about what seems to be 5th edition specifically, I don't know if it's just timing or if it's the game itself, but we're definitely seeing a lot more women playing, minorities playing, people with different cultures and backgrounds and gender orientation, all that kind of stuff. We're seeing a lot more of everybody playing, and to me, I find that to be awesome. So I like to hear how everybody else is having, what kind of experience everybody else is having too. In that.
Yeah, no, I definitely think one of the best parts about 5th edition is that it's been so open and so inclusive to all these, all races, all genders, all cultures. And like, if you look at like the Sword Coast, or if you look at like Storm King's Thunder, and you look at all the different types of humans there, you see they emulate, all of the different types of humans you'd see in everyday life, culturally and, racially, which is really cool. And I think with the Wildmount book, they've also done some stuff with gender as well.
Nice.
Don't quote me on that. I haven't read through it all, but I think there's something in there.
And then you kind of touched on this a hair with that last question. This is a little kind of specifying a little more. What is the most diverse gaming group that you've ever played with? Is it your home game or?
Yeah, I think it would have to be my home game. With playing on Fabled 42 now, I have had the opportunity to play with different groups that have also been very diverse. But I think my home game for me is still probably more the diverse group that I've been able to play with.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Nice. What is the largest group of people you've ever played D&D with?
So the largest group I ever played D&D with was back when I actually first started. I played in a weekly Sunday kind of pickup game at my friendly local game store. And the DM actually ran 2 games. He ran a morning game and an afternoon game. The morning game was open to anyone. So that game I never played in, but sometimes he had like 15 players.
Ouch.
It was and it was it was at the game store. So he had to be like, all right, cool, you can come in. Well, but the second game was you had to pay like $2 to play, and you sat down at the table and there were only 10 people.
10 people.
But 10 people was still like sitting around, like the table was huge.
Right.
We had to take like 2 or 3 different folding tables to make one table for all of us.
For sure.
But it was definitely cool to watch our DM create encounters that were meaningful, even for us at level, like I think we were level 10 at the time when I joined.
Wow.
And it was crazy because he's doing stuff for 10 people and he's running from the books. He's not like, it's not homebrew. He's running from the books. I hope the books were meant for 5 people, maybe 6.
Right.
They're not 10.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and that large groups, obviously it takes time and things slow down a lot. That's tough. 10 is tough. 10 is tough.
Yeah.
All right, last 2 questions. Here we are, question 9. What is your favorite spell and why?
Whew. Well, you're asking the guy who plays mostly barbarians and martial characters. No, favorite spell, cantrip wise, has to be Eldritch Blast. It just has to be. It's such a staple. It's such a staple to the game. I even made a wizard where that was the one cantrip, but like attack cantrip that I took. Let's see. In terms of like the actual ranked spells, I really, I mean, no, I'm trying to pick one because like the ones that have just popped into my head are like Fireball and Lightning Bolt, and I'm like, no, no. Um, I really, really like Spirit Guardians.
Hmm.
For cleric, it's really interesting. Like it's just a good utility spell, and I know there's better spells out there. I'm just trying to pick. I was trying to pick one off the top of my head that wasn't very like popular.
Right.
I think Spirit Guardians is one for clerics that it's an all around utility support spell, but it does so much for your party
Yeah.
and for you.
Yeah.
I'm
No, that's a
also a
good one.
combat guy. I'm also
Yeah.
a combat guy, so I pick combat spells.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. No, that's a good choice. Very good choice. Opposite side of that coin, and last question: what's your favorite magic item and why?
Oh, so favorite magic item. Um, ouch, that is tough. Well, man, you're killing me. Um, you know what? I'm gonna go with one. Where's my phone? There it is. I'm gonna go with one that I homebrewed,
Okay.
if that's okay.
Yeah. Absolutely. Sure.
And I worked with. Let me find it on his Instagram account really quick, so I can show you a picture. Um, but I created this item called the Manticore's Wrath. And essentially it's a great axe. It's a +1 great axe, um, made out of bone, and then it has like a giant executioner style blade. Um, and then on the backside, it grows the manticore tail spikes.
Hmm.
And so the one thing that, and here's a picture for,
The other way. There you go. Oh, there
there
you
you go.
go.
There's a picture for reference.
Nice. Okay. Yep. Nice.
Um, and so the one thing that I hate, and like I said, I'm a barbarian guy. So of course I pick a barbarian weapon or fighter weapon.
Yeah.
But the one thing I hate about barbarians is barbarians cannot do anything if they're not up front hitting you.
Right.
They can't smack you. And yeah, they get javelins and yeah, they get hand axes that they can throw, but it's not very like who cares? Like those aren't very they're not very flavorful. So what I did was when I created Manticore's Wrath, I decided, you know what's one of the cool things that Manticores can do? They have their tail spikes that
Yep.
they can flip, that they can lash out at people with from long range. So I attached them to I said they grow from the bone that used to be like a tailbone or something from a manticore.
Nice.
And so now on top of the 1d12 that you could do with the front end, you could flip it around and kind of lacrosse stick, sling manticore spikes at people.
Nice.
And they do, let me look at the mechanic really quick. Oh, I'm sorry, it's a +2. It has a range of this. I kind of beefed up the range because I wanted it to be similar to a longbow. So it does it. The range is 80 to 120. Since it's a magic item, I'm like, I'll give it the range. That may be a little overpowered, and I may need to dial it back. But it also does 1d8 damage.
Mm-hmm.
So it gives I like it because it gives characters that are all the hack and slash an opportunity now to be okay, cool. I raged and I ran 30 feet. I'm still 10 feet away. Now I'm just going to sit here and hope they hit me or else I lose my rage.
Right.
Now
Exactly.
it gives them that opportunity to boom, throw a spike, keep your rage. Life is good.
Yep. Well, and that's one of the things about like fifth edition that I love is I love the archetypes, the subclasses because I like that you can put a little bit of extra flavor onto each class, and
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of that similar thing. Like you could make a barbarian that's a bowman if you really wanted to. They probably wouldn't be
Yeah.
good at it, but you could do it, But I mean, so that's the kind of thing that I always liked about it was I've played every edition of Dungeons and Dragons, and in previous editions, like most sixth level fighters looked like most sixth level fighters. It's just
Mm-hmm.
one wielded a sword and one wielded a bow or an axe. There wasn't a lot of difference. So I love that. You can kind of get those extra flavors in your
Mm-hmm.
in your characters.
Yeah. Yeah. That's it's and that's one thing I like about fifth edition. And I haven't played any of the other. I've looked into some of the other editions, but I haven't actually played any of the older editions. But fifth edition just seems more well rounded,
Yeah.
and it allows you to really branch out. Like if I want to play a barbarian, or I want to play a barbarian who's a huge tank. Okay, well then you go totem warrior.
Right.
I want to play I want to play a fighter who has a little bit of magic. You play an Eldritch Knight.
Yeah.
And Wizards of the Coast has been doing a really good job making sure there are more and more options for players to have.
Yeah. Yeah, which is very cool. Yeah, I like that part. So, well, perfect, man. Logan, that we made it through all 10 questions. You managed to survive. It's just I think you did a really really good job. I liked some of your answers. There were some good ones in there. Again, let everybody know where they can find you.
Yeah, so you can find me.
It's always the hard part pointing.
Why can't I point my? There we go. I had to swivel in my chair in order to get there. You can find me right there at DM_screening on Instagram. I have a link tree with some of the other stuff I do there. You can also find me on Fable 42. We're actually playing this Sunday our Adventures in Middle Earth game from 6:30 until 12 midnight Eastern Standard Time, and then after that, I'll be playing on Realms of Ukador at some point in the future, and then starting Cantor Chronicles May 8th.
Very cool, very cool. And as always, guys, our Vorpal Board friends, thanks to them for letting us. There you go, that one. There you go, for letting us use their software to hook this up. Check them out, vorpalboard.com. They just did a successful Kickstarter. They're going to be coming out of beta at some point, so we can all play with this.
Super excited to get mine.
Yeah. Oh, I know, it's just so good. If you're trying to play D&D and you're trying to use things like other video conferencing, I'm not going to call anybody out specifically. I almost did. This is the best one that I've ever played. And when it comes to using terrain and that sort of stuff, this definitely is the best.
Yeah, and if you want any, I think Riverbreak is a great show to watch if you want to see how Vorpal Board works. Any of the Fabled 42 shows also do a good job of showcasing the power of Vorpal Board as well.
Yeah, and you guys can find us too at Twitch TV, twitch.tv/Vorpal Board. I have a show on there, Riverbreak, where I get to play with lots of cool people and show you how this stuff works more. And of course, find me at the Arthur of Gaming on Instagram, and my YouTube channel is the same. And like and comment on this video and subscribe and all that good stuff. Until next time, everybody, stay safe. It's a crazy world out there. Take care, guys.